When it comes to TV shows, possibly the most important thing is the villain. The protagonist is of course a central character, but the villain creates a story. And when it comes to the story, the basic principle of what you need is the exposition, the climax, and the end. And what makes the climax stage something good is the antagonist. This antagonist is what makes or breaks the story, and without it there is no story. The villain is vital, you need it, and when it comes to The Walking Dead, they have their fair share of villains, but the two that stick out are the Governor and Negan. Both of these villains impacted the story of The Walking Dead and changed the show forever. Without either of these, the story could have gone a very different way. Firstly, we can start with the Governor. Without this man, poor old Andrew and Herschel would be alive. These characters, however, can be further apart. Andrew is a heavily hated character by a majority of the audience, but nonetheless she definitely had potential, as her comic counterpart was a very major character, and Rick Grimes' main love interest in the comics. This is why many fans believe she would live on for a long time, and she was supposed to, but at the last second the director killed her at the end of season 3. The Governor also killed a big fan favourite, Herschel. He may have been old, rest in peace Scott Wilson, but everyone loved him, and the Governor brutally murdered him in front of his 2 daughters with Michonne's sword. And what's worse is that he made him suffer, he didn't die immediately. And the Governor was objectively worse in the comics, but he was still a complete psychopath of a character in the TV show. He sexually assaulted Maggie, and he killed all of his people, something Negan would never do, and would not brutally murder them for no reason, as he wasn't mentally ill. And I want to delve deeper into the psychopath that the TV Governor is. The reason he is considered so evil is that he didn't have to scare people into following him like Negan did. They just believed in him. And he also had no moral compass other than his own selfish desires. He was fine with murdering children, women, whatever. And he was a man driven by loss and power, willing to do anything to maintain his grip on what he believes is his. And next, what can we discuss is the impact he had, and I suppose the butterfly effect the Governor had. If the Governor hadn't come back after he killed all of his people and returned with that tank, then the gang would have possibly stayed in the prison forever. It was in a good location, they had just recovered from the sickness, and they most likely could have stopped the walkers, and even if they couldn't, they never would have split like the way they did. So due to the Governor destroying the prison, he inherently killed nearly everyone and stopped some characters from crossing paths, such as the gang crossing paths with Aaron, Abraham, Rosita, Eugene. And characters like Glenn and Carl would have died, and his effect was definitely one of the biggest in the shows. And while that's a fantastic character development, and in my opinion the peak of the show in seasons 4 and 5, it created hell for the characters with events such as Terminus, and brutally and mentally changed the characters forever. Next is Negan. Negan's entrance, ironically, is completely different to the Governor's. While the Governor is first off presented as a semi-decent guy, although a bit suspicious, Negan's build-up was insane. Nearly all of season 6 was building up this man up, and his entrance did not disappoint. This man was scary as fuck, and the characters that he directly killed were definitely bigger than the characters the government directly killed. One of the reasons being because the show had been going on for 7 seasons, so we had known these characters for so long. Glenn's death outright made millions quit the show because of how he was loved, and while Abraham's death was outshadowed by Glenn's death, he too was loved by many. This man's aura is unmatched. He walked on, scared the shit out of everyone, completely abolished Rick Grimes' ego, which, let's be honest, he definitely had at this point, and let nobody speak a word. He made everyone his bitch, and he definitely fucking upset a lot of people at this point. This is one of the highest rated episodes of the show, but it's also the saddest. And when it comes to who's iconic between these two villains, it has to be Negan. He has the iconic whistle, the weapon, and the stance. He screams comic book villain. His first appearance is just classic evil guy, and the shit he does is fucking vile. He also lasted much longer than the Governor. He had miles more screen time in total. And Negan, even before season 8, still had a somewhat moral compass. We can see traces of it throughout season 8 and 9. He didn't believe in a rape, even though he's definitely sort of raped his wives, and he had a soft spot for children.
You need my DNA.
So like a blood transfusion.
Additionally, there are still some who argue that Negan killing Glenn and Abraham wasn't even that bad, and was justified. And while I'm not saying this is true, there definitely is an argument for it. Negan only killed these 2, and was planning on killing 1, because Rick and the group slaughtered many of his people.
Me? You mean me?
Such as the biker gang and the satellite post. And him only going to decide to kill 1 or 2 of the people is definitely justified, but the way he did it definitely was not. But Governor would attempt to murder the whole group any chance he got, really. We saw this restraint at first, but later on he definitely would have killed them all if he could have. But not all of his screen time, Negan, is him being the villain, so we have to take this into account too, or at least the full-on villain. Because after the events of Season 8 take place and he's defeated, his redemption arc begins. His arc is nearly concluded by Season 11, and at this point he was carrying the show and now a fan favourite by some. They flipped the switch, because of course some still resent him for what he did to Glenn, but it's a divided topic and nobody can deny that he's an interesting, well-written character by the end, and one of the best in Season 11. So in conclusion, I can say that the Governor is the better villain. He is a portrait of a man consumed by his own demons. His descent into madness into Season 3 is fantastic writing, and it really paints a picture of how evil and demented he is. Negan, however, has a much longer and satisfying arc, and a less evil mind. He's not got anything wrong with himself mentally, and he's a better character, but not a better villain, simply because he is less evil and much more redeemable than the Governor, who I believe by the end of Season 4 is definitely not a redeemable character at all, and didn't really have a redemption arc coming in. So overall, they're both great villains, but the Governor is better.